very good morning and welcome one and all as I resume this, our 6th meeting of this special select committee of the Parliament. Might I advise in welcoming you that this meeting is being held in public and will be broadcast at a later time on Parliament's Channel 11, Radio 105 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. I would like as well to remind those present in these precincts and our listeners and viewers that this committee is mandated by the Parliament to obtain information, documentation, and or evidence relevant to and or touching and concerning the method, process, criterion, and considerations utilized by the Police Service Commission and or the firm employed by the Police Service Commission in the selection of candidates for the position of Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police to enable the House of Representatives to consider notifications submitted to it by His Excellency the President pursuant to Section 123 of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and to report to the Parliament by the 27th of April 2018. I would like, therefore, to ask those of you who we invited here today to introduce yourselves, after which we will introduce ourselves for your benefit and for the benefit of the listening and viewing public. So might I invite you to introduce yourselves, starting with...
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm Bliss C. Prasad, Chairman of the Police Service Commission.
Especially welcome you this morning and thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Prabhavati Miraj, Acting Director of Personnel Administration.
Good morning, Chair and members. I am Dinanath Ramkisoon, member of the Police Service Commission.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Dr. Maria Gomes, former Chairman of the Police Service Commission.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members. Dushyant Sukram, Managing Partner of KPMG in Trinidad and Tobago.
Legal Advisor, Service Commissions Department. Good morning, Kavita Jodan, Senior State Counsel, Service Commissions Department.
Good morning, Chair and members. Alison Correa, Acting Executive Director, HRM.
Good morning. I am Margaret Morales, Acting Deputy Director of Personnel Administration, Service Commissions Department.
Thank you very much. My name is Fitzgerald Ethelbert Hines. I'm the chairman of this special select committee of the Parliament.
Rudal Munilal, member of the committee.
Terence Yalsing. Good morning. Terence Yalsing, member.
Good morning. I am Randall Mitchell, member.
Good morning. I'm Gary Sigmund.
Thank you very much all. Might I remind us that at the last hearing with you, the Police Service Commission and KPMG on the 6th of March, we sought and obtained responses on certain aspects of the procedure followed in the recruitment process, being reviewed for the benefit of the House of Representatives. This is a continuation of that hearing. I would like to open the floor immediately, or by the way, let me say we continue to work with our code, our alphabetical code, by which we will identify the persons whose matters are before us. So we'll all be guided by that. Yes, and I would therefore like to now open the floor to my colleagues to begin the discussions as we have them. Mr. Dialsing.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry.
My apologies. Could I be permitted to just make a very, very, very brief statement?
Yes, you have 1 minute so to do.
Okay,
Please,
I will make sure I
Chair.
keep it to less than a minute. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and other members of the Special Select Committee. On behalf of the Police Service Commission, I take this opportunity to thank you all for convening this session. I wish to assure this committee that our representatives stand ready and willing to share with those present and the country at large via the Parliament the information requested of us by your good selves in an effort to ensure that the Special Select Committee is able to present its report to Parliament within the time set for it. We are fully aware of the outcome of this committee's deliberations will point the way forward to move the process along regarding the ultimate selection of candidates for the positions of Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police. Permit me to convey the apologies of Commodore Franklin for his absence, as he's currently out of the jurisdiction. Commissioner George is also not present, as he's currently in Tobago and was unable to secure a flight back to allow him to be present this morning. Mr. Chairman, I thank you.
I thank you very, very much. Mr. Dayal Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of very brief questions to Mr. Sukram of KPMG. Could you tell the committee what steps did you take in your professional and security vetting under the order section 3C, where it states the firm shall ensure, the firm that is KPMG, shall ensure that the candidates referred to in paragraph B are subject to the best practice security vetting and recent professional vetting. What steps did you take, sir?
There were job performance checks. Calls were placed, questionnaires emailed to superior officers of all best fit candidates. A standard list of questions were used and all responses documented. Documented performance appraisals were obtained for the last 3 years. Credit checks. Candidates were required to apply to an institution that performs credit union check for documentary evidence of their credit position. This was then supplied to the firm as evidence of their credit score. Financial checks. Financial institutions were requested to issue a letter of good standing for the shortlisted candidates. These letters we have in our possession. Security checks, certificate of character. Police certificates of character were requested by candidates, and the original document provided to KPMG as evidence of no criminal convictions. That is consistent with Legal Notice 219, Section 2 and 3, I think. Existing closed complaints from the PCA. Request was made to the Director of Police Complaints Authority for any complaints levied against any candidate on the best fit list. This was done through the PCS, as time was of the essence, and KPMG writing to the PCA, we couldn't afford to risk the PCA saying they cannot respond to KPMG, so we did it through the PCS.
Could you just repeat that, please?
PSC, sorry. This was done through the PSC because this was around November 13th or 14th, if I can remember correctly. We were mandated to complete this engagement by December 8th.
So if I may, did you write formally to the Police Complaints Authority?
So I am saying that we did this through PCS. PSC would have been the one who wrote PCA to be able to provide the information to KPMG. So, if you could just give me one second. A non-disclosure agreement was signed between KPMG and the PCA. We were integral to the process. We just asked the PSC to do it in the essence of time to expedite it quickly.
Well, you see,
So let me finish, and you can ask me the other questions. There's an education verification. Authorization in writing was obtained from each candidate, which was then used to acquire documentary evidence from the university attended by these candidates. This was used to verify that they, in fact, attended the university and obtained the qualification listed on the application form. The university provided the verification directly to KPMG. And the last one of the 8 was the executive medical. A private hospital was selected to perform these medical checks on the 12 best fit candidates. This private institution also signed an NDA with KPMG, Each candidate underwent the same medical assessment reports and the results were supplied directly to KPMG.
So, Mr. Sukram, is it that you are saying you wrote directly to universities?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then that makes my question even more important. If it is you had the time and the wherewithal to write directly to a university, why didn't you have the time to write directly to the Police Complaints Authority?
We had the time. It's just that we foresee that a response could be negative. And we didn't have the time to falter on a response being negative.
Wait, so you are saying because you foresaw that a response could be negative, you did not write?
We asked the PSC to write.
Thank you.
The issue here is to get a response.
Thank you.
To be able to make a decision.
No.
Question. This is to the PSC. According to the order, the Commission shall take into account all the information. We've taken evidence here that the PCA would have written through KPMG to you, making certain recommendations about a particular candidate. Did you take that into account? What was done subsequent to those recommendations having been made? Did you conduct investigations of your own?
The PSC considered the recommendations made by the Police Complaints Authority, which were for our consideration as to if we would go any further. In perusing all the documents that they sent, it was actually missing some stuff, and we wrote back to them, and then they replied, providing the stuff. And one of the documents that was sent on the 7th, in the 7th month, in July 2012, indicated that after investigation, the matter was closed. This is at PCA's end. And there was no substantial information, new information then coming to us from what all of the members went through the documents, and we had our legal people do it as well. So we considered everything. We considered all the background checks and the PCA in particular.
Just for clarification, the PCA wrote to the Police Service Commission with certain recommendations for certain actions to be taken. That is the evidence that we took here not too long ago. You're now saying, your evidence here today is that the PCA did not make any recommendation, but rather the PCA indicated that the matter was closed.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Yes, thank you.
What is happening is that the PCA, this matter was since 2011, and I have seen a document on the file, I think it's dated the 2nd of July 2012, in which the legal officer at the PCA recommended closure. And there was a closure, that means closure of the matter. And then there was
what does closure of the matter mean?
Meaning that there is no evidence to proceed further. As my understanding, Madam Chair.
Content yourself with what you read, if you read it, and don't interpret it.
Well, the member asked me what is closure, and I was my opinion of closure, Mr. Chair,
yes,
with your greatest of respect.
I'm sure he'd reconsider that because we're not seeking your opinion on that.
I'm guided. Yes. So from 2012 to the time, I think sometime in 2017, we have not seen, there was a big gap. Subsequent to that, when the PCA wrote to the commission, there was, in that file, I think there was no recommendation from the PCA. And we thought, as a commission, that the recommendation was missing, and we asked for the recommendation. And then came the recommendation, and then with the legal advice, the PCA took a decision not to proceed any further with that.
What was the recommendation, and what was the legal advice, and from whom did you receive that legal advice?
The recommendation of the PCA was to institute disciplinary matters against the candidate. Right? The legal opinion from that matters for more than 5 years constitute an abuse of process. We were provided with cases, and then we took a decision not to proceed with the matter.
Right. Mr. Mitchell, anything further on that matter?
Mr. Amkisoon, if I can just continue on this line. It is the first time I am hearing this, unless I missed a meeting or so, which I never did. In 2012, I prefer if you would take the time to get a specific date and to be 100% sure on the date. There's an internal correspondence at the PCA that recommended that this matter be closed in 2012. Is that what you have informed this committee?
Yes.
And you have seen this?
Yes, I have seen the document.
From the nodding of the former chairman, I believe you have seen it as well.
Yes, we've all seen it.
Thank you very much. Do you have any information from the PCA as to what would have changed between 2012 to 2017, at the end of 2017, to merit reopening this matter, revisiting this matter, or completing this matter, since there was on file information suggesting that the legal opinion was that the matter be closed?
No. Just a second. Let me clarify this for the benefit of the public before you answer the question. What I heard the former chairman have just said is that the commission members all saw a correspondence on that file where there was a view that the matter be discontinued. Am I correct?
Yes.
That was not a legal opinion. It was just a correspondence on the file. Am I correct?
It didn't say that it was a legal opinion. But it is from their legal counsel. From the PSC's legal counsel.
Just let me clarify this. Now, subsequent, well, so Dr. Munilal's question is, let me just, what was the question? Just a second.
My question is simply this. And could I say, Chairman, that unless we have been furnished with this correspondence before, and I don't have it in my package, could the Public Police Service Commission undertake to furnish, at least myself and the committee, with a copy of this correspondence -- information from the legal counsel or whatever legal person from the PCA that we are referring to, because we are continually referring to this correspondence and we have not seen it. So my question was simply, in the minds of the Police Service Commission, do you know, did you take steps to understand why a matter being recommended at the PCA should be, to use the term discontinued, in 2012 was apparently reopened and completed at the end of 2017? That was the question.
No, we did not take steps to find out why they reopened it. When we all looked at it and the recommendations were missing, we wrote and asked at the end of November, we wrote and asked for further information because we're not seeing the recommendations there, all right? And subsequent to that, the deputy director wrote correspondence to us and indicated the particular areas that they wanted us to consider taking disciplinary action on.
Could I just follow up here, because I'm not understanding something thoroughly. The PCA wrote to the Police Service Commission, indicate that there was a matter involving a particular candidate. But you are saying at first they told you there was a matter involving the candidate but made no recommendation as to what should be done. And you sought further clarification by way of asking for recommendations. Is that so?
Yes, because it was an entire package that they sent to us with all the evidence in that sense. And
Sure.
we read everything and couldn't find it. So that's why we wrote.
Could I ask just two smaller questions, but related to this matter? If you do have your documents with you, at what date in 2017, it would have been the second half of 2017, did the Police Service Commission specifically asked the PCA to supply information on your shortlist of candidates. There must be a date at which you first did that, not the clarification that you sought and so on, the first date. And at the end of 2017, when the particular information on this candidate came forward to you, when you sought clarification, did the PCA at that time also send files or information on any other person, any other persons that they would have been investigating outside of this matter?
To answer the last question, first, they didn't send any information on anybody else, as far as I can recall.
Whether related to this matter or not?
Yes.
Thank you.
In terms of the date, just pause for 1 second. November 14th. 2017.
Yeah, just on the same matter, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Dr. Gomes, yeah. When you received the package, you said you received a file with evidence. The evidence would have supported some type of recommendation, but you're saying that you didn't see any recommendation on the file. You're also saying that when you perused the file, you saw some internal correspondence that recommended from a legal counsel to the head of the PCA that the matter be closed. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying that, and we have a copy here of the letter from of the PC.
But it's an internal correspondence, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
It's internal correspondence?
Yes, it was part of the package.
Okay. And in the package, there was evidence, and you're saying that notwithstanding there being evidence to something, there was no recommendation, and you had to seek clarification afterwards?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Madam Former Chair, Mr. Ramke, soon we can address directly on this matter as well. We were told in a session before, it was in the public, it was carried on public TV and radio and so on, so it is in the public domain. We were told by the PCA specifically that their information given to the Police Service Commission was part of the run-of-the-mill operation that they would regularly send matters once it is in the remit of the Police Service Commission. They would send matters to you with recommendations and so on various officers. We were told that it was just a coincidence that the information on the candidate appeared to you, came to you around the same time that you were undertaking this thing. Now, this is suggesting the information that there's some conspiracy of some kind here. That you are saying now to us this morning that you asked on the 14th for information. It was sent on the 30th, and it involved a piece of information that we did not know before, that there was a correspondence in the package that suggested that the matter of 2011 be closed or discontinued in 2012. Did the PCA send the information on the candidate to you, in your view, as part of their regular sending of information to you, and it was just a coincidence that the candidate was at that time being considered by you? That is the information we received, and I just asked for your view.
In my opinion, it was not sent in due course of sending things to us.
So, thank you, Chair. I just want to complete this. So this information was sent to you in response to your request for the security vetting of all the candidates.
Yes, that's how it was sent, in response to the security vetting.
And in that process, you saw a document that pointed to the closure of that particular matter together with a bundle of other documents.
Yes, that is correct. We saw a whole package.
And then subsequently, for my clarification, you sought to get a recommendation from the PCA. So subsequently, and in that recommendation, they suggested disciplinary proceedings for the consideration of the PSC.
Yes, that's what they
notwithstanding the document for closure previously.
Exactly.
And all that informed your decision not to take disciplinary proceedings.
Yes, that informed, all of that informed our decision not to take disciplinary action.
Okay. I want to continue. Not in that vein, but in another vein. Yeah. Sweet.
Now, you are aware, former chair, that the PCA is a body corporate. It's an entity under law. And you are aware that the view of any individual may not necessarily be the view of the body corporate. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I understand and agree.
And do you understand that if you saw a correspondence written by an individual, it may not have been the view of the body corporate? Do you understand that? Accept that?
That was provided as part of their package. I would therefore interpret it that it is coming from the PCA.
Right. But you did receive subsequent to all of that, on your request, you did receive a response from the body corporate, ultimately, which recommended disciplinary action. Is that correct?
It recommended that the PCA...
Let me get the question right. You did receive, ultimately, on your request, a response from the PCA body corporate after the letter you read, recommending consideration of disciplinary action. Is that correct?
Yes, consideration of disciplinary action.
Thank you very much. Mr. Singh, proceed.
Thank you. I want to address this question through you, Chair, to the chairperson or a member of the PSC, and it deals with the creation of the Order of Merit list. So after the participation in the assessment process, KPMG provided its assessment process and scores and its report to the PSC. The PSC then created an Order of Merit list. Please remind us how you went about creating this Order of Merit list.
In terms of the creation of the Order of Merit list, we looked at the assessment scores, the dossiers of all the candidates, all of the 12 candidates, all right? And based on the legal notice, which said that indicated that the highest score be taken into consideration, we looked at all of that. While we perused that and took into consideration everything in the dossier, including the professional vetting, the medicals, the academic verification. When we took all of that into consideration, we decided that we would then go in terms of the scores, that the assessment scores, the highest scores, and given the best fit, because we were looking at best fit. Unfortunately, Commissioner George is not here, but Commissioner George then decided that he could make things simple for us in terms of deciding on the Order of Merit list, because the Commission has the prerogative to decide how it is to be ordered, given contextual factors, okay? Apart from the final scores. He therefore came up and I believe responded to questions that we submitted to you all, and he responded to that particular question in terms of how the final scoring was done and how that Order of Merit list came about. For your information, it is called the border count approach. He did not put that in his response, but I researched it, and that is what it is called. And that's how we came up with those final scores.
So this border count approach found itself at the meeting of the PSC, the commission, to create the merit list.
Yes, the final.
But is that border count, how can that border count explain the jump of candidate J? Because it appears to me it was without borders then, because he jumped from one category into the next category, into a superior category.
Okay, when we looked at utilizing that mathematical formula that Commissioner George came up with, we looked at several criteria. I believe you all have those notes. And some of them were command ability, police experience, the security veteran, integrity, future strategic plan, vision, what's this? Future strategic planning, and what's this? I'm sorry. Right. So those that I just gave, as well as suitability criteria of skills and ability, qualification, training, competence, work performance, personal qualities, potential for future development, and continuing team performance.
But I just want
contributing to team performance. Sorry.
I just want to be clear, because you abandon an empirical basis by KPMG in which there are clear assessment scores in every area, including those that you just mentioned.
Yes.
And that is an empirically, scientifically based assessment, and then you went into this realm. So how did the commission arrive at this? Did they think that by owning the process, they could arbitrarily determine an assessment process?
I would not say it was arbitrarily doing this, right? And it wasn't that the KPMG's assessment process, of which we were a part of, which was rigorous, which we agreed to in totality, because we signed off on every piece, every action that they did, we signed off on. When it came to this, we were deliberating this almost 6 weeks. And we had put timelines on that firm with the contract that we had. I think it was 4 months. All right? So here we are at the end. And we cannot decide as a commission how we are going to do this, which as former chair, I thought would be very simple to do, because we look at the dossiers, we take into consideration the contextual factors, and we have the scores that are there. All right? When it was raised, when this border score issue came up, there are 4 commission members. And in terms of, and I'm being absolutely honest, blunt, frank.
Yeah, you have to be.
Yes. Okay? When it came up and the solution was proposed that we, as a commission, now have to take into consideration what KPMG has done, but we can also decide on how we want to shape this given these contextual factors, all right? So that each person then decided based on the criteria, which are very similar, as you said, to what KPMG did, so it's almost a duplication of effort, how we would want these candidates to be reordered if we had to reorder them. And therefore, there's a formula then, a multiplication factor, all right? What you all were given was 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It was not 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It was 4, 3, 2, 1. And Commissioner George is very well aware of that. I'm sorry he isn't here today, because the correction was made to him. Commodore Franklin made that correction to him when it was being sent to you all. So that's how it was done. So it was 4321, you multiply it, and you got some final scores, which the DPA would have there in terms of how the scoring went. In terms of the person who went from the number 6 to number 2, that's how that ended up that way. All right?
Mr. Singh's questions. At the end of the assessment process, based on the report that we have, candidate J was deemed by you, and by you I mean the PSC, to be suitable only for a particular office. Is that correct?
Correct.
Great. Following on Mr. Singh, notwithstanding that, you wound up with him being considered for another office. Is that correct?
Based on the discussion among the members,
Madam Chair,
we wound up doing
former
that.
Chair, just a second. I just want to be short. I asked a simple question. It was and remains, whatever you did on your order of merit list, that candidate J, who by you was deemed suitable only for one office, was elevated to consideration for the higher office. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, the question for you is, this question that you told us, that you put to all of the persons who you were considering after the assessment, either a question or a suggestion, well, a question whether they'd be willing to be considered for the other office, because we are dealing with commissioner and deputy, and you told us that by the final process where the PSC is now handling this, where you're taking all things into account, you did tell those persons after the assessment that the other office was, well, you asked them whether they would be willing to be considered for the other office. Is that correct?
That was the last question for each person.
Yes. Now, my question, simple question is, do you consider, even now with the benefit of hindsight, that that question as to whether you wanted to be considered for the other office would have been more appropriate at the start of the process or at some stage during the assessment process as opposed to after all the assessment was done? You follow my question?
Yes, I'm following.
Let me repeat it just to ensure. The question is, you put that to them after the assessment. I'm asking you now, very shortly, whether you consider, even with the benefit of hindsight, that that question would have been more appropriate at the beginning of, or sometime during the assessment, as distinct from after it all.
Given the question you are asking, and in hindsight, I would still hold to the fact that because it is a process where you are funneling down, you are general, you are doing the 20 people, and you are funneling down, because at the end of each stage of the assessment process, with the final stage being our interview. Our interview was part of that process. This is the final piece now where the commission is interviewing. It was appropriate to ask it at that point of the 12 candidates. We asked the 12 candidates.
Next question. And therefore, you do not consider it to have been appropriate, and when I say you, the PSC, you do not consider it to have been appropriate to have undergone an additional assessment before a person can have been considered for the other or alternate role. You didn't consider that.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding
Let
the
me
question.
try it again then. Based on your last answer, you are suggesting to us that you, at the end of the day, you did not consider it appropriate to conduct some additional assessment for the person to be considered for the other office. In other words, you proceeded without the need for additional assessment to change lanes from one office to the next. Am I correct? You did not consider that to be appropriate.
From the beginning, when we were looking at the competency model,
Madam Chair,
I cannot answer it in the way you would like.
All right, then let's move on.
Fine.
Just a second. Just a second. Let's move on. You cannot answer it. I accept that.
In the way you're asking.
All right. And I asked it twice and you cannot answer it. It's not your fault. It's not mine.
May I be able to ask it in another way?
1 second. 1 second. Let me just... At what stage, if any, were the candidates, at what stage of the assessment, if any, were the candidates made aware that they would be considered for the alternate role or assessed for the alternate role? Do you understand that question?
Yes, I understand the question.
Please, could you venture an answer?
At the last stage of the process, which was our interview.
So, by way and for the benefit of those who listen and watch us, by way of hypothesis, let us say candidate T, not considered another thing, I go on to T, hypothesis, who applied for the post of Deputy Commissioner of Police, assumed that she or he was being assessed for that post only during stage 1 processes. That candidate discovers that she was in fact being assessed for the Commissioner of Police at the end of stage 2. This is my hypothesis. Do you, the PSC, and I'm asking you on behalf of the PSC, consider any HR troubles or issues or deep concerns here?
No, we didn't consider
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Because I can't answer.
You did not consider. That's enough for me, my question.
I am trying to appease the public.
Could I ask the same question the chairman asked and you can expand? No, I'm prepared to hear you expand on the answer for the same question. Because I'm very interested in the because part.
In terms of the job descriptions, where it was not night and day, because a deputy can act as a commissioner at any point, which candidate J was doing. And that was one of the reasons that candidate J jumped to, all right? Because it was said that he had acted in the position already. But anybody can act. So therefore, in terms of people being considered at the end there was no need to do it from the beginning, and we didn't consider there would be any HR problem because it's best practice.
So what you are saying is that if someone couldn't qualify to be on a team, it makes no sense asking them if they're willing to serve as captain.
Precisely.
Thank you. Now the question I want to ask, now the question I want to ask now is, so to wrap up this issue, in a nutshell, you're saying to us, yes or no, that when you came to the crunch and you had the candidates who made the cut and you had to make a selection, it is at that point you put to all whether you are willing to serve in another position. Because doing that at the beginning would have made little sense if someone was not going to make the cut in the first place. Is that so?
Precisely. We are funneling down.
Okay, thank you.
Just thank you very much. Based on the metaphor employed a moment ago about team captain, the way I see it, this is not so much about captain as it is position on the team, though leadership is an issue. It was about suitability for the position of commissioner, as opposed to the position of deputy commissioner, two distinct positions, like a right back and a goalkeeper on the football team in the metaphor. And therefore, in that metaphor, it is not so much, Madam Former Chair, about, I'm asking, about being captain, because the captain has to play in a position too. It is not so much about being captain. And therefore, if you are not suited for being on the team, no point asking you to be captain. Alternatively, it could be about not being suitable for the team at all, and then being asked to play in a different position. So the question is, do you hold the view that if someone was not aware of and was not assessed for one position, you simply could have changed them to play in another? Is that your view? You hold that view?
That's why we ask the question.
In fact, on page 9 of your proposal, it stated that KPMG, the firm, will develop, and I'm quoting, will develop a job competency framework based on the requirements of the position, and I take note of singular, not positions, as specified in Legal Notice 219, and the job competency model. At page 9 as well of the selection process assessment report, reference is made to, and I quote, leadership competency model designed for the leadership of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The question is the job competency framework referred to in that proposal the same as the leadership competency framework?
Yes, absolutely.
Would you agree that there is some ambiguity about the role and function of the various competency models and frameworks referred to?
I'm not clear as to the question you're asking.
The question is, reference is made to job competency framework and leadership competency framework, and you are saying that they are one and the same?
To answer that, yes.
Now, in respect of the leadership competency framework, is it not the case that a leadership competency framework represents the overall framework around which top leadership jobs are described within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service?
That is correct.
Okay. Mr. Dayal Singh?
I just have a series of short questions. The border count approach, and that border is BORDA. It's the first system first used in 1435 and then refined in 1770. Did KPMG sign off on that approach?
That was done at the order of merit stage. We weren't involved in that part, so I can't.
You said Mr. George, who is an excellent attorney, brought the border count approach. Is that correct? And the rest of the Public Police Service Commission accepted it. That's what you testified to this morning.
I never said he was an excellent attorney. I said, yes, Mr. George, the commissioner of the PSC, brought that. Yes, I said that. Great. The border count approach.
Did the commission seek advice as to the relevance of the border count approach to the shortlisting process from a, because I am seen as an excellent attorney, but did you seek the advice of an excellent executive HR practitioner to determine whether this particular approach, the border count approach, was the appropriate tool?
No, we did not seek any further advice.
And that's the problem. Okay. Because, Chairman, the border count approach, like many other approaches, are prone and are capable of manipulation. It is capable of compromising positions, burying candidates, teaming up, and cloning. And that's why I have always focused on the HR component of this process. So it seems to me the commission took the word of an excellent lawyer who is not an executive HR practitioner to use an approach which may not be the best approach. That's one. Two, to Mr. Sukram, I had asked whether you wrote to the Police Complaints Authority, and you said no because you were afraid of a negative response.
I said that we, as the PSC...
You anticipated a negative response. Yeah. Would it surprise you to learn that Mr. West, when he was here yesterday giving testimony last week, he said he had the discretion to give you information, and if you had asked for it, he would have supplied it.
And I agree with that completely. He had the discretion, and that's the operative word. He could have made a choice not to do, and that is a risk that we were trying to prevent.
But it was up to you to make your request under Section 3D of the order to do the professional and security vetting. You should have taken all logical steps and written to all persons without fear of being rejected. You should have done your due diligence.
Member Dayal Singh, we could have done 10 more background checks. We had to draw a line in the sand as to how much we are willing to do.
Okay.
Chairman, thank you. I want to go back to the recommendations from the PCA. I just want some further clarification. You're saying that the PCA sent a file with evidence and a recommendation. And you're saying that you applied a lot of weight. You applied a lot of weight to an internal correspondence. And you also applied weight to the legal opinion that you would have received. And on the balance of the evidence, you decided that it was not worth pursuing. That is correct, Ms. Gomes? Dr. Gomes, sorry.
We also got additional information. The commission requested additional information from the candidate himself.
The candidate himself?
Yes. And as well, in the PCA file, the candidate had written categorically denying the allegation So we were going on an allegation, and it would have been an allegation.
Okay, did the PCA, the file that you would have received, did the PCA embark upon that sort of investigation where they would have put allegations to the candidate? Okay, sorry about that. So this decision, can you confirm that this decision, the making of this decision led to the 2-2 split vote?
We took a decision, and it was 3-1, that we were not going to take disciplinary action. And we would give the candidate 24 hours to produce some more information. When the candidate produced the information in 24 hours, we then looked at that information to come to another decision to take a vote. And where the split vote, where I took the casting vote, that's what you're talking about?
Yes.
Right. I took the casting vote when we were looking at the point of if we should investigate. So it was on the investigation the casting vote was taken. The day before or 2 days before.
Investigate what? Investigate the recommendation?
The same allegations that were made. If we should then mount an investigation. So the 3-1 was on the disciplinary, if we were going to take disciplinary action. And we all agreed that we were not going to take 3-1, that we were not taking disciplinary action. The following day, or the day after, sorry?
Can I assist?
Okay, yes, go ahead.
We took a decision, when the information came to us with the file, the commission took a decision, and then we wrote to the...
What was the decision?
To hear the applicant's position.
So you took a decision to investigate further?
So yes, and we wrote him, and he responded. And then we wrote again, and he responded again. Am I right? Then he responded, and then came the time to make the decision of whether we would continue the investigation.
And that ended in the split vote?
Yes.
Right. Is that your usual process in terms of investigating recommendations from the PCA?
Well, the Service Commission, we have a discretion whether, remember the PCA is recommending. We have a decision to make. The decision rests solely with the Commission, and we took a decision not to proceed, having heard all sides.
Could I just get back? Yes. Could I just quickly, Mr. Sukram, ask you a pointed question? Do you think it made, in your view, any material difference whether you would have approached the PCA directly at the risk of they using their discretion to assist you further or not, as opposed to going through the Police Service Commission to communicate with what would be another state institution to get the information for you? You think that, in your view, you think that made any material difference at all?
It made absolutely no difference.
Could I also ask the former chairperson, the question that just relates to Member Mitchell's earlier intervention? I'm hearing, just for my clarification and members of the public, I'm hearing this notion of the Police Service Commission investigating. Do you investigate? And if you investigate, who really investigates? Is it, you are not an investigator, are you? What is the process and how often do you investigate?
In my tenure, we never investigated anyone. What would have happened, as in one of the candidates before, when the matter of the judgment came up, we called in the candidate to answer questions about that. There has never been any investigation launched into anything while I was the chair.
And since you tell us that, the matter involving a candidate here, and you know the candidate, of course, where there was a judgment that had certain, conclusions and so on, you all undertook to call that candidate and had a discussion with the candidate on that matter. But did you also seek legal advice as to whether that candidate ought to be considered or should be considered in this process, given the judgment that was in the public domain?
Okay, so first of all, that candidate was called in, at a point in time when he was being considered for acting as the COP.
Okay.
So that was when we called him in. The second part, answer. In terms of the second part of the question, we sought senior counsel's legal advice as to if these matters debarred candidates. It didn't debar either of those particular candidates from participating, yes.
As opposed to recommendation on any merit. Now, Mr. Ganga Singh, you had a question? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before you do, Mr. Ganga Singh, please bear with me 1 second. Madam Chair, former Chair, then you told Mr. Munilal a while ago that there's no history and you all don't investigate. Is that correct? That the PSC doesn't investigate anything?
We can call in, but we don't have an investigator as such. We can call in to inquire.
And you have a disciplinary process if you had to undergo such a process?
Yes, we would have had to develop one.
Do you consider, just before I give way to Mr. Singh, did you consider that this business of calling in and asking for an explanation, do you not consider that to be, in a sense, an investigation?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, it was. Because when I'm trying to get traction and moving things across the board, 6 weeks we're there, and you come up with this miracle board accounting, yes, we're trying it.
Okay. That was your response to Mr. George, Commissioner George.
I didn't say it exactly like that.
Thank you. The question I want to address to Mr. Sukram. In the process where you utilize the commissioners to participate in the assessment exercise, do you believe that any conflict of interest arose because the members had previous knowledge of the applicants who had worked previously with them?
We considered it, and we didn't see it to be a threat to the process.
Right. In follow-up to that question, did you, KPMG, have any documented process for the handling of potential bias in the assessment process?
A documented process, yes, we have a documented process. It's integrated into our whole HR process.
I asked specifically, did you have a documented process for handling of potential bias in light of what you have just replied? Did you have a documented process for dealing with this potential for bias, seeing that the Police Service Commission had been interfacing with officers of those ranks for a long time and this was a special process?
And the answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Could you make that available to us in writing promptly? How soon right, we'll expect that. Thank you. Mr. Dialsing, go ahead.
Thank you. To Mr. Sukram. Mr. Sukram, did KPMG supply to the Commission the results of its own assessment process, including professional and security vetting of all the shortlisted?
Yes, we did.
Good. Did that include your own examination, because you did not write to the Police Complaints Authority, and that's the trouble I'm having. From Section 3A, B, C, and D, it is the responsibility of the firm to do these things. Now, you just said there's no difference between whether you or the Police Complaints Authority wrote, Police Service Commission wrote to the Police Complaints Authority. But I am putting it to you that the firm is supposed to give a report to the Commission, but what has happened here is that the Commission, on your instruction, I suppose, wrote to the Police Complaints Authority, saw all that beforehand. And that is the problem I am having with the firm taking this step back and allowing the commission to do the firm's work?
So I think it's the other way around, Member D.L. Singh. I think it's the commission asking KPMG to assist the PSC in doing their work. We were a tool. The High Court judgment said that. So it's not acceptable to say that we are asking the PSC to do our work. We are working for the PSC. We are a tool. The PSC is using us as a tool.
Okay.
Tell me something, in terms of a training, mandatory assessor training, what does KPMG consider to be mandatory assessor training in the process?
This training that is required to be used in the interview or the assessment.
Were written training processes and exercises undertaken with those who you trained?
There were no tests, if that is what you're asking, but there was training, interactive training. Questions and answers.
Could you describe what sort of guidance and practice exercises that were undertaken?
And we conducted training with members. We conducted training with the members who were going to be part of the interviewing panel.
We know that. I just want you to describe what sort of training and what sort of guidance and practices you imbued them with.
And that's what I'm trying to do, Mr. Chairman. So we basically went through the type of questions, body language, how you follow up on questions, the competency model that is being tested, what we're basically looking for. So there were two elements to this. One was the first stage one, which included the interview and the role players, the role play test. And then it was stage two, which included the majority members of the PSC, and they were all trained in how to ask questions, structured questions. You're not looking for yes or no answers. You're looking for questions that could test the mettle of the candidate.
How many persons you trained?
We trained 4 members of the commission.
And no one else?
Oh, we trained some of the role players that we used as well.
In respect of the members of the PSC, I want an accurate, as far as practicable, an accurate assessment as to how long did this training take?
The training was probably about an hour and a half on specific areas that would be used in the interview process, and probably about 2 hours for the role play aspect.
Mr. Sukram, somehow I feel I heard this before, but the question really, the root of this issue is really the propensity for bias and prejudice and infiltrating and polluting and corrupting a process. Could you tell us the corridor that is available in that approach, notwithstanding your interpretation of the law and that you acted properly according to the law, the corridor of uncertainty that will bring risk and the propensity to pollute that process by having members of the Police Service Commission involved in that way? To what extent? What was it? Was it a risk? Was it a 1% risk, a 90% risk? Was there no risk? You know, was there any propensity at that time, given that approach that you embarked on, that you could have skewed the process one way or another?
Okay, I think there would always be a risk. So to say that there was no risk would really not be correct. In terms of if I go through the stages and look back at it and say, what was the risk of bias in stage 1 of the interview, I would say, if I were to rate it at a percentage, it probably might be 1%. If I go to stage the role play in terms of the bias, I would probably say there could be a 5%. 5, maybe 10%. If I were to say stage 2, which is the PSC's process, I would say there would be a greater element of bias. But what I can say that could really be the umbrella over this whole thing is that how can one be biased towards oneself? If I am if this is my process, if I am the CEO of an organization and I want to hire a CFO, am I sitting on this panel? Would that bias my view of looking to get the best person? Would it not be in the interest of the members of the PSC to find the best person for the job? With the support and guidance.
The ethical issue is not really my issue at this minute. It is to what extent that approach allowed for bias. You have answered that. And would it have made a difference now? Could that involvement at your level, I'm not talking about the PSC final stages and so on, at your level, the involvement of members of the Police Service Commission, trained as they were by your people, would that have made a difference in terms of the final list, the final quality, the people who emerge? Would that have changed that?
I think the answer is categorically no.
Mr. Sukram, would KPMG's internal HR processes allow for KPMG to take an excellent person in another field, train them for an hour and a half to interview someone to hire a CFO? As you just said, if you had to hire a CFO, would KPMG train a novice in executive recruitment for an hour and a half and have them hire a CFO?
You would have heard, remember,
no. Yes or no?
No, I can't give a yes or no answer.
All right, in which
I really
case
can't.
we leave it like
Thank
that.
you.
In which case we leave it like that. So we wanted to hear you say, Mr. Singh, you have a question?
Just to follow up on that, you took members of the commission with their own professional expertise and you trained them in being able to participate in the interviews. Mm-hmm. From your professional experience, how would you rate the members of the Service Commission in the context of recipients of that training?
I saw them in action. I would rate them 7.5, 8 out of 10.
Could I just follow up on that? I think it's an interesting angle, Mr. Sukram, that the members of the Police Service Commission worked alongside you, pursuant to your understanding of the law and what was required, using the KPMG as a tool to further their duty. And you provided training, so you did not see those persons as just novice or as just people without absolutely no intelligence or literacy or educational background themselves. So you work on that basis of the professional standing of those persons themselves.
And that is correct, and that is what I was going to say to Mr. D.L. Singh's question, where the Commodore and Mr. Ram Kisoon both attested to the fact that they have over 80 years' experience in recruiting.
Mr. Sukram, would you take an excellent engineer with 18 years' experience and train them for an hour and a half to interview for the position of Chief Financial Officer in KPMG?
If I would take an excellent
with
engineer?
No formal there's a difference between formal qualifications and experience. And that is my problem from day one in this exercise. You had excellent people, excellent lawyer, excellent, but no formal qualifications in executive recruitment. They may have had experience. Would you, as a managing director, rely only on experience and not formal qualifications, train somebody for an hour and a half to do executive recruitment?
In my life and experience, there's no greater teacher than experience. None.
Wow.
How would you react to a suggestion from... We have had the benefit, this committee, of expert advice. How would you react to a suggestion that was made to us that it would take at least 2 working days to properly train persons to be a part of that kind of technical assessment? How would you react to that?
I would say that that's an excellent thing, but you have to look at the involvement of the persons and the weight that they're carrying. If it is that they were doing the interview themselves, I could understand that you take 2 days and give them lock, stock, and barrel to be able to deliver on the day. But if they're being guided in the process with more experienced people on the panel, I see absolutely no problems with having an hour-and-a-half or 2 hour session.
Okay, thank you. Just a second. This brings me to perhaps my final questions here. Madam former Chair, do you not consider that the unique set of behaviors that one would expect from the office holder of Commissioner of Police will be markedly different from the unique sets of behaviors to be reasonably expected from the office holder of Deputy Commissioner of Police? Let me put it more simply. You don't consider that there are any unique set of behaviors that are different between the two office holders?
A unique set of behaviors, but the deputy can act at any point in time for the commissioner. And it was clear in...
You consider that there are unique sets of behaviors. Fine. Now, this brings me back to Mr. Sukram. No, my last set of questions. This brings me back to Mr. Sukram. You said that had the persons who you trained, purportedly trained, been on their own, 1 hour and a half would not have been adequate. But because they were being guided, then in your view, 1.5 hours, as distinct from the 2 days which you said would be more appropriate, would be fine. You told us that. Am I correct?
I said it would be more appropriate if they're doing it themselves, right? Let's get it in context.
This now is where the issue is. Those persons who were being guided and had this experience to have required only 1.5 hours in your view, these are persons who would have been interacting, assessing, receiving complaints on, treating with the office holders that you were recruiting in their life as Police Service Commission members. So while they were not rookie, while they were not brand new to require the 2 days, they carried the potential for bias because of those very offices. And I want you to react to the suggestion that therefore more training might have been the more proper thing to do in those unique circumstances. What is your reaction to that?
You're right, and just to let you know, and I was just reminded that we had a 1-day training session in addition to the 1.5 hours and the 2 hours for all the members of the PSC. So we had a 1.5 day training in equivalent for all the members.
But I'd asked you earlier to describe for us what were the training measures that were undertaken. And you told us what you did. So you're now saying that it went on for 1.5 days.
I just remember that, and I could forget, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
It happened.
Yes.
That is the reality.
Yes. So I want to ask you finally then, do you have any documented training, the training program, the course component, what they did, and for how long? Do you have any documented things to satisfy this committee of what you have just said that you could provide us tomorrow?
So it was training based on the questions and that we were going to ask the day after.
It appears as though I have not made myself clear, and I want to end now and give way to one of my colleagues. I'm asking specifically, do you have any documented evidence of the course component, the training, and what you did and for what time and by whom and who participated?
Yes, we could provide that to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Sukram, just a follow-up on this matter. In your view, whether if someone comes into a process with a premeditated propensity to exert bias and prejudice, if you train them for 1 hour and you train them for 1 year, would it make a difference fundamentally?
It would not, because bias is inherent.
Now, the former chairman, I was really taken up on an answer you were giving and you regrettably had to stop. We were asking about the skill set for the Commissioner of Police as opposed to the skill set for the Deputy Commissioner of Police. You were suggesting that while it may be different, the Deputy Commissioner of Police at any time could be asked to act, and in some cases maybe for a considerable period of time, as a Commissioner of Police, and that influenced you as well?
Yes, that is so. The person can be asked to act so that in that final pool of 12, you're really looking to see who is the best fit for the COP and the DCOP, but you know that they can step in at any point. And what I was also going to say, it was evident from the beginning of the assessment center throughout, because people showed incrementally their growth development, if you want to call it that, when they had the role play, etc. Some people were better at that, and shun, and you know, that was the feedback you were getting, that people then may have brushed up. If they thought, for instance, that the first interview was, you know, it wasn't going to be so challenging, then so you know that they brushed up and did some homework so that they could come to the final interview then ready to answer anything. Because as I said, we funnel. So the first questions are broader, and then you're funneling down to specific questions.
Thank you. I have a follow on that. The list that you provided us with after the assessment, insofar as those deemed suitable for the position of commissioner, consisted of 5 persons. Is that correct? And the list deemed suitable for deputy consisted of 8 persons. That's at page 37 of the document you gave us. Am I correct? Altogether, 12 people, because 1 name appears on both. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct.
Now, you did say in answer to Dr. Munilal that you had the considerations that you do because a person can be asked to act, and therefore, for that reason, there's a there's a movement between the 2 officers. You did say that.
Yes, I did.
But I have noticed on this list, in the first 5 suitable for COP, 3 of them have never had the opportunity and would never have had the opportunity to act as commissioner. And in the second list, 6 of those persons, 6 of 8, would not have acted and would never have had an opportunity. In fact, one of the persons of the 12 names was never a police officer. And therefore, the question is, if your answer to Dr. Munilal that they can easily be made to act and therefore it really didn't make too much difference, where does that leave that view in light of the fact that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of 12 people would never have acted or have had an opportunity to so act between the 2 roles? And then I'll give way to Mr. Singh.
In terms of the ability to act, you're saying to me that when you look at the list, most of them have not acted, and that one of them is not even, or 2 of them were not even in the police service, all right? From the beginning of the assessment center, people in answering their questions in terms of the vision they may have for the TTPS. There were questions that they were asked that they showed up themselves as critical thinkers, as forward thinkers, as visionaries who could inspire people, etc. All of the things on the competency model that we were looking for. There were people there who were shining, and that's how those people came up. Because as you rightly said, there are some people here who are very young. So one of the things that the Commission considered, and I think this is very important for you all to understand, that while this was one exercise, further to this, we have to look at succession planning. And so you have people here who we saw had potential to grow. And so they ended up here. And that's how, so you have to look at it in a holistic way. It was not just about choosing a few people here. So that's how that order of merit list and everything came up. You considered a lot of other things. Go ahead and ask me again then. I'm sorry.
All right. Mr. Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to go back to the leadership competency model, and this question is directed to the KPMG. That model, did that model emerge as a result of an analysis of the job specification of both the Deputy Commissioner of Police and the Commissioner of Police, having regard to the fact that those two offices fall within the remit of the PSC?
Yes.
So in your analysis of those jobs definitions, what they do determine the competency model, leadership competency model for both
positions. Yes, that is correct.
Both positions. So you did that. You did that
yes.
Job analysis.
So we basically designed the skills that would be required for a person to function effectively or at a highly effective level at both the commissioner and deputy commissioner level. And that is how those skills came. Those are the skills that are required to function at a highly effective level. And then we basically assess the candidates on these skills. It was not whether, and I say it again just for the record, so the people in the Clapham bus will understand, that these skills were designed to test the people who will be successful in the role. It was not geared towards who applied for what position. And again, it goes back to the whole talent pool strategy, where we basically get the pool of talent and find the best person for the job. What would really differentiate them would be things like vision, whether you could motivate people, whether you could inspire confidence in the TTPS. These are the things that would really differentiate now between a deputy commissioner and a commissioner. Not at 10 years or 15 years. You will have to meet that criteria anyhow. In fact, all the 12 candidates at the stage 2 level met the criteria of being, that would satisfy the criteria for being a commissioner of police.
Mr. Sukram, you're on record as saying this morning that bias is inherent and no amount of training would eliminate that. I'm paraphrasing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Correct. But do you think that the strategy used by the training of persons excellent in their own rights but not versed by qualification and experience in executive HR could lead to error? Forget bias.
So no. No.
You don't think it could lead to error?
Because we were KPMG was from the assessment center stage, we were responsible for this process in terms of decision making, in terms of objectivity, in terms of leading the panelists into what is the best decision at the end of the day. We were integral in that process. So the whole idea of bias doesn't arise in my mind.
Error, not bias.
The whole idea of error does not arise in my mind because we were in control of the assessment center.
And last question for the day to Dr. Gomes. You said that you just gave this border control method a try. And again, I want to ask, was any assessment, expert HR assessment done of the border control method?
No, there
Thank
was
you.
no assessment of the border score method.
Thank you. I'm done.
The ground that we had proposed to cover today, except of course, I just heard an assertion from Mr. Sukram that we were in control. I thought we were told all along that it was the PSC. But I gather that he knows what he is saying. Yes. So, folks, I would like, on behalf of this committee, to extend our very sincere thanks to you, the members of the commission, who sat at the relevant times. I would like to especially thank you, Dr. Gomes, having demitted office and having still presented yourself before this committee to give the information that you shared. I would like to thank the Office of the DPA in particular, Secretariat to the Police Service Commission. And I would like to thank Madam Bliss C. Prasad for your presence here today in your capacity, newly minted chairman, and your support staff. This committee is really deeply appreciative of your presence and the information you've shared with us. It would assist us in no end to advising the Parliament accordingly. And at 12:19, I would like to bring this public hearing to an end. Thank you, good luck, and God bless. And we suspend this meeting pending your departure from this room. Travel safely. Thank you.